The fall season always brings with it a certain allure. The cool breeze, the falling leaves, and the faint golden hue of the sunset give the world a mystical touch. But beneath the beauty of autumn, there are secrets hidden in the shadows. Dark secrets that some are unfortunate enough to uncover. These are the terrifying true tales of ordinary people who encountered the sinister side of fall. So, settle in for a spine-chilling ride as we dive into the unknown. October 1st rolled around, and the first crisp gusts of autumn air signaled the start of my favorite time of year. There's something magical about fall. The way the trees transform into fiery red and orange hues, the smell of wood smoke in the air, and the anticipation of Halloween creeping closer. This particular fall was even more special, as it was my first one spent with my boyfriend Carter in our new home. We had recently moved in together, and while the place was still a work in progress, I wanted to surprise him by decorating it with fall and Halloween-themed decorations. I envisioned a cozy atmosphere, filled with pumpkins, string lights, and all the things that make this season feel like home. I had already picked up a few decorations from local stores, but I wanted more. Something unique that could make the place really stand out. I decided to check Facebook Marketplace for some affordable secondhand finds. Scrolling through the listings, one ad immediately grabbed my attention. A large green plastic container packed full of fall decorations priced at just $20. It seemed like an absolute steal for the amount of decor it promised. The description was simple. Everything must go. Container full of fall decorations. $20. Clearing out house. The listing didn't provide much detail, but the picture was convincing enough to make me curious. Intrigued, I clicked on the seller's profile. His name was Cody, and his account was mostly private. His profile picture showed a man wearing a gray trucker's hat, but the angle of the photo obscured his face. His cover photo was a blurry image of what looked like a lake, but it was hard to tell for sure. Despite the minimal information, I figured it was worth a shot, so I sent him a message asking if the decorations were still available. To my surprise, Cody responded almost immediately. He confirmed that the container was still for sale, and we arranged for me to come pick it up later that evening. He said he wouldn't be home from work until around 9 p.m., which seemed a little late, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I was eager to get the decorations and start setting up the house before Carter got home from work the next day. After Cody sent me his address, I decided to check it out on Google Maps, just to make sure I knew where I was going. The house was in a part of town I wasn't familiar with, and while it didn't have the best reputation, the house itself looked normal enough in the street view. 2 cars were parked in the driveway, and the lawn was well kept. It looked like an ordinary suburban home, but something about it still left me feeling uneasy. I figured it was just nerves about picking something up from a stranger, so I brushed it off. To be safe, I asked my friend Sally if she would come with me. She agreed, and we set off around 8:30 p.m., chatting and laughing as we drove through town. The streets became darker and more isolated as we approached Cody's neighborhood. The houses grew older, and some looked like they had been abandoned for years. Broken windows, overgrown lawns, and dimly lit streets gave the area an eerie, almost post-apocalyptic feel. "This place is giving me serious horror movie vibes," Sally said with a nervous laugh. I nodded in agreement, feeling the unease grow as we pulled onto Cody's street. When we arrived at the house, the driveway was completely empty. The 2 cars I had seen in the Google Street View were gone, and the house itself was dark except for a faint glow of light coming from one of the front windows. My phone buzzed with a new message from Cody. "When you get here, come right in." I showed the message to Sally, and we both exchanged uneasy glances. Something about the situation felt off. Why would he tell us to come in without meeting us outside first? We sat in the car for a few moments, debating whether we should just leave. But after a few minutes of silence, my curiosity got the best of me. "I think we should at least knock," I said, my voice shaky. Sally didn't look convinced, but she agreed to go with me. As we approached the house, the unease grew stronger. The porch creaked under our feet as we climbed the steps, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. I knocked lightly on the door. "Hello? Cody?" My voice trembled as I called out, but there was no response. Sally nudged me, her eyes wide. "I don't like this. We should go." I was about to agree when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. The blinds in one of the front windows shifted ever so slightly, like someone had been watching us and quickly pulled them shut. My heart skipped a beat. I was about to turn and leave when the door creaked open just a sliver, revealing a dark, shadowy interior. My phone buzzed again. "I'm at the door. Come in." Before we dive deeper into this unsettling situation, don't forget to hit the like button if this story is already giving you chills. Share it with your friends because trust me, things are about to get even stranger. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob, staring into the darkness beyond. Everything in my gut was telling me to turn around and leave, but something kept pulling me forward. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was stubbornness. Whatever it was, it led me to push the door open a little wider and step inside. The moment we crossed the threshold, the smell hit us, an overpowering, musty odor mixed with something else, something foul and decaying. The air inside the house felt heavy, thick with dust and neglect. The faint glow from the window was the only light in the room, casting long, eerie shadows across the floor. I covered my nose with my hand, trying to block out the smell, but it was impossible. "Cody?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. From somewhere deeper in the house I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps that seemed to echo through the empty halls. Then from the darkness a voice, "It's in here. Come take a look." Sally grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "We need to leave. Now." I couldn't agree more. There was something very wrong about this house, something that made my skin crawl. But instead of leaving, I called out again. "Can you bring it out here?" There was a long pause, and then the voice, deeper and more irritated this time, responded, "You're no fun." That was it. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get out of there. I turned to Sally and nodded toward the door. "Let's go." We began backing toward the exit, but before we could make it, a figure appeared in the doorway of the next room. He was holding a large plastic container, but it wasn't green like the one in the ad. It was red, and whatever was inside it was emitting the most putrid stench I had ever encountered. The smell hit us like a wave, causing both Sally and me to gag. The man, Cody I assumed, was barely visible in the dim light, but I could make out enough of him to know that something was off. His face was pale, almost sickly, and his eyes... There was something in his eyes that sent a chill down my spine. He stared at us for a long moment before lifting the lid of the container. Sally let out a soft whimper beside me, and I knew we had to leave. Now. Without another word, I grabbed her arm and bolted for the door. We didn't look back as we ran down the porch steps and into the car. My hands were shaking so badly that I struggled to get the key into the ignition. As we sped away, I glanced back at the house one last time. The front door had shut behind us, and the windows were dark once again. Later that night, after we had calmed down, I told Carter everything that had happened. He was just as freaked out as we were, but he wanted to look up the house to see if there was anything unusual about it. The next day, he told me what he found. According to public records, the house was owned by an elderly woman in her 60s who had lived there alone for years. There was no mention of anyone named Cody. What do you think was inside that red container? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I have a feeling your theories might be scarier than the truth. The fall of 2019 was one of the most exciting times of my life. I had recently graduated from college and had moved to Asheville, North Carolina for a temporary job. It was my first time living on my own, and Asheville seemed like the perfect place to start this new chapter. Surrounded by the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, the town had a quirky, artsy vibe that I loved. In my free time, I often went hiking, exploring the endless trails and waterfalls that the area had to offer. One Wednesday afternoon in October, I decided to take a solo hike at DuPont State Forest, which was about an hour's drive from my apartment. I had heard about the park's beautiful waterfalls and was eager to see them for myself. The weather that day was perfect, cool, cloudy, and just breezy enough to make the hike feel refreshing. When I arrived at the park, the parking lot was nearly empty, which I didn't mind. I enjoyed the solitude of hiking alone, especially when the trails were quiet. I set off down the trail, enjoying the peaceful sound of leaves crunching under my boots and the occasional rustling of the wind through the trees. The forest was alive with color, the trees ablaze with shades of red, orange, and yellow. It was the perfect day for a hike, and I felt completely at ease. After about an hour of walking, I reached Triple Falls, one of the park's most famous landmarks. The waterfall was stunning, cascading over the rocks in a series of powerful drops. I stopped to take a few pictures and admired the view, grateful to have the place almost entirely to myself. That's when I saw her. She was standing just off the trail, partially hidden by the trees. At first, I thought she was another hiker, but something about her made me pause. She wasn't moving, just standing there, staring directly at me. I waved, trying to be friendly, but she didn't wave back. Instead, she turned slowly and disappeared into the woods. I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something unsettling about the way she had looked at me, but I tried to brush it off. People hike alone all the time. I reminded myself, maybe she was just shy. Still, the encounter left me feeling uneasy. I continued my hike, making my way up to High Falls, the second major waterfall on the trail. The falls were just as beautiful as the first, and I spent a few more minutes taking pictures. But as I looked around, I saw her again. The same woman, standing just off the trail, watching me. She was closer this time, and I could see her more clearly. She was older, maybe in her mid-50s, with short, grayish blonde hair and a gaunt, almost sickly complexion. Her eyes were fixed on me, and there was something about her gaze that made my skin crawl. She didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there staring. My heart began to race, and I quickly turned away, pretending not to notice her. But as I walked back down the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Every few minutes, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see her behind me. But she never appeared again, at least not on the trail. That night, after a long day of hiking, I went to bed early, hoping to put the strange encounter behind me. But in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of something moving at the foot of my bed. Groggy and disoriented, I sat up and froze. There, standing at the foot of my bed, was the woman from the trail. She was exactly as I had seen her in the woods, silent, still, and staring. My heart leaped into my throat as I scrambled backward, pressing myself against the headboard. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just stood there watching me with those cold, expressionless eyes. And then, without a word, she turned and walked out of the room, disappearing into the darkness. I was shaking as I jumped out of bed, turning on every light in the apartment. But she was gone. I checked the doors, the windows, everything was locked. I had no idea how she had gotten in, or if I had imagined the whole thing. But the image of her standing there, watching me, felt all too real. 2 days later, I got a call from my mother. My estranged aunt, who lived in Germany, and whom I had never met, had passed away unexpectedly. My mother sent me a photo of the prayer card from her funeral, and when I opened the message, my blood ran cold. The woman in the photo, the aunt I had never met, looked exactly like the figure that had stood at the foot of my bed. If this story gave you chills, be sure to subscribe to Nightmare Narratives and hit the notification bell so you never miss another terrifying tale. Sleep tight and remember, sometimes the nightmares are real.